Hi, welcome to Ghost Pepper Lollipop, where the takes are spicy, the host is sweet, and we engage the fact that multiple things can and often are true at the same time. This week, we're talking about the manosphere. And for those of you beautiful summer children that do not know what the manosphere is, here is a brief definition. The manosphere appears to be a digital playground, cesspool, for guys who think they're the world's foremost authorities on everything related to masculinity. And they think they know everything related to women too. It's it's a creepy little corner of the internet where you can find endless discussions on how to red pill yourself because apparently you need help seeing the imaginary ways women and others oppress you. Keyword imaginary. Here, you'll encounter a creepiful mix of self-proclaimed pickup artists sharing their expert dating strategies alongside men's rights activists who believe the world is out to get them, mostly because women want to have a say in their own lives. It's a space where emotional expression is thrown in a grinder in the favor of bro talk and bravado. And vulnerability is seen as a weakness, best reserved for soap operas. Side note, y'all know that wrestling is a soap opera for men. Y'all, you know, you know that. Okay, you do. You please, yes, you know that. You know that. Throw in a healthy dose of misogyny and toxic masculinity, and you've got a recipe for a community that mostly helps guys bond over their grievances. They're not really real grievances, rather than, addressing real issues, the real things that, affect and oppress them. So, if you're looking for a place where you can complain about the feminization of society while mastering the art of objectifying women, the manosphere is where you go to learn to be a really much larger piece of trash. Like, it's what it is, y'all. It's where we're at. I didn't invent the place. I didn't invent the place. I just unfortunately spent way more time than I really would have otherwise desired learning about it. Also, I can share that information with you. And boy, is this going to be fun. My gravy. All right, so as the influence of the manosphere grows, it's kind of becoming the prime source for men who feel like they've been wronged by women and others, because they don't just relegate it to just women, though they hate us most especially. So it's the source or it's a prime source for men who feel like they've been wronged by women and others getting the tiniest bit of equity, that little tiny bit of equity that we've sliced off, that really hurts them. Like it's very painful for them. Like we need to all understand that it hurts them for some odd and fragile reason. Not that it helps to tell them that. So, with its collage of misguided advice and self pity, this smelly corner of the internet is shaping a new generation of men who believe the secret to happiness lies in scrolling through memes about how oppressed they are. Not happy with doing the oppression, want to be seen as oppressed too. This feels there's a word for this. There's a word for this. Feels absurd. It's freaking absurd. Mm, foregoing healthy relationships, emotional intelligence, or, working to be likable or, achieve personal development, the manosphere is everything you need to embrace your inner wine bot while nurturing a delightful sense of victimhood. With every click, the more wannabes are diving headfirst into this echo chamber where they're told the real men don't cry, unless it's about their dating woes or, you know, because they need to manipulate a woman into their beds. And the assertiveness, yeah, that means yelling to them. You don't yell at them. It hurts them. It hurts them. So as a result, we're witnessing an alarming trend, a rise in self-styled experts who'd rather complain about modern dating than actually try to connect with another human being. Well, modern dating, modern society, gay people, I hate to tell y'all, but the manosphere leans white and to the right also, which has a whole other host of problems when we come in with the others that I referred to before. So, the manosphere claiming to empower men, all it really does is promote harmful ideologies that detract from personal development and healthy relationships and encourages toxic masculinity. And we all know Ghost Pepper don't have any seriousness for toxically masculine men. I will laugh. I I will just laugh. I will just laugh. I can't even talk about the behaviors because I will just laugh at it. I will just sit here, I will giggle. That will be what we do this week. So I have achieved a definition. Toxic masculinity is the absurd belief that real men must suppress their emotions, except when it comes to expressing anger and, denying that that's an emotion, and that vulnerability is a trait only for the weak. You can't do it, though. This mindset reinforces the idea that showing feelings is a sign of inadequacy, and it promotes the unhealthy definition of masculinity, where dominance and aggression reign supreme, and those pesky emotions you're uncomfortable with become behaviors the rest of us want to punch you in the pants parts for. It drives men to equate strength with emotional restraint, dismissing compassion and empathy as traits that undermine their manhood. So, in essence, toxic masculinity embodies the notion that true worth is derived from bravado and emotional stagnation, reducing men to stale cliches instead of encouraging them to embrace the full range of human experience and denying men the full range of their personhood. And, creating the behaviors that we already said. So in that vein, it simply encourages aggressive and dominant behaviors. They're really not dominant. I don't know why I wrote that. Aggressive and weak ass behaviors that show us that you can't handle emotions. They're too much for you. You are not strong enough for them. And this has a severe effect on men's emotional health, mental health, emotional health, and their ability to be vulnerable. I mean, the the impact of toxic masculinity on men's emotional health and vulnerability is nothing short of a Space Force failed rocket launch waiting to happen. In a world where real men are expected to bottle up their feelings, it's no surprise that many men are walking around like emotional time bombs, ready to explode at the slightest provocation. The pressure to never show weakness means that expressing vulnerability is seen as the ultimate betrayal of their man card. And you know, another man's gonna come along and swipe that right out of their little handy panties, which is somehow revocable and also innate. Like, how can it both be like removed from you and also just be a thing that men have all at the same time? Those maths don't math. If you could just explain it, the comments, I please, I, I'm curious. So instead of seeking help or sharing their struggles or trying to improve their likability and social skills, they opt for a stoic silence and tough guy facade. Convinced that pouring their hearts out is reserved for songwriters and soap operas, and not realizing that the wrestling match they watch with all of the, acting and the whole performance and the storyline, that's a soap opera for men. And the anger is an emotion, Boo Bear. So this leads to a severe disconnect from healthy relationships. I mean, the manosphere causes, well, it reinforces a disconnect that this patriarchy begins to cause with men and having healthy relationships with one another, as well as women, non-binary people, queer people, people that aren't white, the whole gambit. Because let's be real honest, the manosphere leans white and to the right. Just bringing you the information. I filled my brain with gross information, and now I give it to you. It is yours now.
One of the reasons we haven't seen women faction off into violent subcultures the same way we're seeing now with some young men is this. Women's grievances were real and addressable to some extent. For generations, women came together around shared pain, reproductive rights, domestic violence, economic exclusion, legal inequality. We're still doing that. And as hard as it was, there were ways to change things through organizing through policy, protests, cultural work. The pain was rooted in reality, and that gave us a path forward. But many of the grievances surfacing in these male dominated subcultures, they're made up or based on distortions of reality. There's no policy to fix women won't date me. There's no law to reverse I don't feel admired. There's no reform to fix the fact that you expected power without earning it. And that's where it gets dangerous, because when your pain has no foothold in reality, there's nothing to protest. So the only thing left to do is invent an enemy and then try to destroy it. That's why we should be paying attention, not to mock, but to interrupt the spiral before the story becomes even more violent.
And interrupting the violence before it can become worse, before it can be every 5 minutes that a woman is killed by a man instead of every 10. Let's see if we can stretch that out to, once a day at the freaking most. Like, or that's still excessive, y'all. But anyway, because y'all don't listen to us and y'all need to hear it from a man, I also have the perspective of the creator that I got this from. And as always, all of the links are in the playlist in the description box below. And do please go and check for yourself. Make sure that, you know, you're doing your critical thinking in your part. And I highly recommend this creator, the public offender. Amazing creator, just top notch, and will help you work through this stuff as well, and is good about it.
Is essentially what I got from what she was saying is the first group of people, I should say, that I thought of were like male advocacy groups, right? Like men's rights groups. And if you listen to what they are saying, they don't have a gripe. Men actually are oppressed, but we're oppressed by other men. We're not oppressed by women, and women getting rights is not oppressive to us. We are oppressed though, as All working class people are oppressed. Men are oppressed economically. Men are oppressed socially. You know what I mean? Men are oppressed physically. You know what I mean? Like we're killed, we're sent off to wars. Like, yes, we're oppressed as fuck. We're oppressed as fuck as men, right? But we're not oppressed because we're men. That's the difference. We're not oppressed because we are men. We are oppressed by other men because we're human, and those men want to steal our labor like they want to steal everybody's labor, right? But we're not oppressed because we're men. That's the difference. So when women are talking about the things that women are going through, it is unique to women because they are being oppressed because they're women. We can't relate to that. We're not oppressed because we're men, right? We can talk about that with black people. White people are oppressed not because they're white, they're oppressed because they're workers. They're oppressed because they're poor. They're oppressed because they're human. And there is a small group of people that want to oppress all humans or don't give a fuck about oppressing all humans, right? And you just fall underneath that really broad umbrella of humanity in those people's mind. But I, as a black person, a huge, I have a layer of oppression that you don't have to deal with if you're a white person because of my blackness. Women have a layer of oppression that I don't have to deal with because I'm a male, right? So whenever we're talking of these issues from a gender perspective or a sex perspective, men need to shut the fuck up because you're not oppressed due to your maleness.
And like Pup said, that's not to diminish the fact that men are oppressed by other men, by the patriarchy, by this society, and the perpetuation of this nonsense. One of the ways that men allow themselves to be isolated and controlled and abused by other men is when they buy into the idea that showing emotions is a sign of weakness and that vulnerability is strictly off limits. And they end up building these impenetrable walls around themselves. Now, while this emotional fortress may feel safe, it is stifling genuine communication. It turns conversation into stilted exchanges, and it makes every interaction feel like a tense standoff instead of a real conversation or attempt to resolve an issue. And this especially comes up if we ever call out a man for a misogynist action and they don't want to hear it or fix it. And so they just shut us down and, no, I did not, and do the whining little victim thing instead of addressing it. So it comes across in no matter what your relationships are, in every relationship. Particularly in intimate relationship, it leads to a cycle of frustration and disconnection. Partners are left feeling like roommates instead of lovers, or a friend feeling like walls instead of people. Friends don't want to talk to walls. They want to talk to people. They want to talk to their friend. That's why they come to you to talk. And normalizing that is one of the ways that y'all win. Normalizing just talking to your friends is a way that you reject this entire notion and start the healing process. So don't feel like there's not a way through. There is a way through. We just have to talk about the really, really honest stuff so that we can get through to the good parts. In the manosphere, we have to be honest about how it's hurting and not helping men. So instead of open discussions about feelings, hopes, challenges, there's this constant game of emotional hide and seek, and that's not helpful for anyone. And the result is that men find themselves alienated, isolated, angry, and feeling jilted, while their partners are left questioning if they're in a relationship with a person or a needy statue that can nod along, or a child that they have to raise and take care of the every whim of. And being the emotional guide for a child is different than being an emotional guide for a partner. it's a lot of work to be somebody's emotional support person. And while we do that for each other as people, the extra burden of trying to be somebody's emotional guide or emotional feeler, the person that feels their emotions for them, will drive a wedge between you and whoever you are demanding that very hard work from. And mostly because will they'll feel inadequate to it. They won't be able to do it, not effectively. No one can feel your feelings for you. No one can wave a magic wand and make them disappear as much as everybody would probably like to. The trick really is feeling it, allowing it to be what it is, and letting it pass through you. Whether that means that you sit and you take very strict note of every feeling in your body and what those emotions are doing to you physically, and tell yourself that they're valid and that this is just a natural part of being a person, and then let them pass, or whatever your trick is, whatever trick you find to sit with those feelings and then let them pass. That is how you get through this. That is how you actually win. And the manosphere is just a cycle of bullying you into being tough in this imaginary way that doesn't actually exist. Real strength comes from admitting when you can't do something and getting it done regardless of your ability. That's hard. When you're raised in a society that tells you that independence is all and you have to ask for help and accept it, that can pose real challenges. That takes strength. Yelling and screaming and tough guying around and the issue not getting resolved and the thing not getting done, that just takes ego. It really just takes ego. And I've never seen much strength in men's egos. In fact, I spent a whole little minute giggling about the lack of it. I'll remember that. That was fun. The other aspect of the manosphere is it builds a cycle of isolation instead of supportive friendships, because these people are bullying you. You're not actually going to be close friends with people that are bullying you. And isolation significantly impacts the mind. It leads to a range of negative effects. When people spend prolonged periods alone, their mental health can suffer to extremes. It results in increased feelings of anxiety and depression. The thoughts can become distorted, causing worries to magnify and rational thinking to just go, ooh, bye bye. Social skills can decline when you're isolated, and interactions with others can feel really extra awkward and challenging. Over time, isolation can create a cycle of loneliness that just reinforces negative emotions, and it hinders the well-being uh, overall, and it makes it difficult for you to connect with others when you're isolated in that way. And the manosphere demands that sort of isolation because to reach out and to really connect with somebody is against their rules. The other aspect of the manosphere that is very damaging to men and everyone, honestly, is the misinformation and misguided advice.
This is how I know that y'all don't really give a fuck about men. This is how you expose yourself. What's wrong with men's mental health is that everything that they've ever been told that makes them a man has always been at the cost or subjugation of somebody else. Every single last aspect of men's mental health deteriorating is directly contributed to patriarchy. Everything from not being able to express your emotions, even the way the family fucking courts are set up that you're fucking complaining about. You know why we have child support, why we have these family courts that are set up that are so against men? It's because dudes don't take care of their children. They run at the opportunity to do so. Most men. Oh, lack of domestic violence and homeless resources. Who actively votes against them en masse every time, every time. The conservative party is made up of majority men, white men in particular. They stand in the way of all this shit. Y'all hate yourselves.
Y'all hate yourselves. And like I said, the manosphere leans white and to the right. And those men are advocating for all men to vote against their own interests, against having social programs, against safety nets, against mental health. It is men that are harming other men. It is mostly, unfortunately, white men that are telling everybody to vote against their own interests. This is damaging, and there's a spread of these pseudoscientific claims about gender dynamics within the manosphere that's really harmful because it promotes misleading and often damaging beliefs about both men and women and abuses both. It also causes harmful and persistent dynamics like rape culture, like we've been discussing the last few weeks. These claims often misinterpret or selectively use research to support stereotypes, suggesting that men and women have intrinsic qualities that dictate behavior in relationships. This not only oversimplifies complex human interactions, but it also contributes to toxic ideas around masculinity and femininity. By presenting these claims as facts, the manosphere fosters an environment where harmful stereotypes thrive. For instance, it reinforces the notion that men should be dominant and unemotional, while women are portrayed as manipulative and untrustworthy, all while softening themselves to be so sweet. These narratives can lead to an increased misogyny and resentment on both sides, by the way, as they create divisions between genders rather than encouraging healthy communication and mutual understanding, which is what we should be working for. The pseudoscientific beliefs can discourage individuals from seeking genuine connections and understanding in their relationships, and it will also keep people from looking for those checks that we all need as people. Checks on our biases. Sometimes we can't see them by ourselves, and having others to help us check them, that's just good peopling. When people buy into these misleading ideas, it can hinder personal growth, empathy, the ability to form healthy, respectful partnerships, and the propagation of these pseudoscientific claims in the manosphere undermines both individual and societal well-being, perpetuating harmful attitudes that affect real-life interactions and relationships. And it leads to really a zero-sum fallacy.
Using the shield of advocating for men.
But you don't advocate for shit. All you do is complain about women or saying things to make my feelings hurt.
This is such an excellent and accurate critique of men's rights advocates. And it's ironic since I just finished an article on this topic about meaning making in men's advocacy discourse. Now, the article isn't terribly surprising. It argues that much of the meaning making in the manosphere is about blaming men's issues and lack of advocacy on women, specifically feminist philosophy, research, and organizations. It never advocates for men. It simply reframes men's victimhood as a product of women's neglect of men and prejudice against men. Now, this works to do a few things. First, it positions women as manipulative and ruthless in exploiting a system that benefits them. Men, in turn, are positioned as helpless in the face of this exploitation. Second, it works to devalue and discredit feminist philosophy as a biased and tainted source that can be dismissed without bothering to consider or engage with it intellectually. The problem is that reality and studies do not support this position, as anything but a fairy tale, pure fantasy. So what do you do when you've positioned your masculinity as the bedrock of rational thought, but everything you believe contradicts reality? Well, you just make up facts and appeal to pseudoscience to appear rational. Refer to studies without ever citing your research, or just appeal to common sense. Everyone knows that courts are biased against men. That way, you can lean into familiar gender roles, portraying yourself as the logical, rational man fighting against a wave of hysterical feminist extremists, even as you make a purely emotional argument. The article also talks about a more subtle approach, the both sides tactic. I just wish we could advocate for both men and women without this need for a gender war, which is an attempt to position oneself as an authority, as a neutral and equitable figure, and appeal to reasonableness at first glance. But it's nothing more than a
And that zero sum fallacy is having the impact of low self esteem and lack of personal growth, which is continuing to have men unalive themselves at 4 times the rate of us. And that is an unacceptable number. Y'all should not be accepting that as acceptable. The patriarchs and the oligarchs that demand this cycle of abuse continue does not have to perpetuate at your hands. Y'all get to decide to stop this. Y'all get to decide to accept the checks on your biases that you need, that we all need sometimes. Sometimes we can be blind to our own biases. That's why they're biases. The lack of accountability and consequences for harmful behavior just exists to perpetuate the behavior. When there are no consequences for a behavior, it tells the person that that behavior is acceptable and that they can continue doing it forever. And that society and the person that it's happening to just has to accept it. That is the only thing that happens when you don't have consequences or accountability for a behavior. The person doing the behavior just learns that it's okay to do that behavior. There, we've discussed the stigmatization of seeking help and therapy that is so damaging to men's mental health. And that is another aspect that we have to fight against, and particularly men. Y'all have to fight against that. Y'all have to normalize calling each other, checking in with each other, and telling each other to seek help when help is needed, and tell each other that's the strong thing to do. It is. I'm a stubborn person and a willfully independent one, and I am also guilty of not asking for help all the time when I need to. And I will tell you, it has historically been harder for me to ask for help than to not. And so I'm pretty sure I'm right that it's the stronger action here. The long-term effects on mental health and well-being, physical things, as well as, no longer being on the earth to experience life with us. And there's a lot of life to be experienced here. We need to engage building positive male focused communities that allow balance and checks of the biases, that allow men to check in with each other and check in with themselves. Places that it's safe to not only be a man, to be a man that has feelings and wants to explore the breadth of those. Y'all can look at this as a loss of something, and so many men do and are. Or you can look at it as being able to reimagine and rebuild manhood and masculinity in an amazing way. It's y'all's choice. You get to decide what this looks like now. And do examples of healthy masculinity for each other and support networks, like calling each other or building little support groups for y'all to talk about this stuff in, because you have to discuss it. To heal it, you have to talk about it. Things that go under the rug don't get fixed. I made this little chart. It's skills that I have personally, me. And if you'll notice, I changed the color on them. On one side, we have baking, painting, sewing, floral painting, sculpting, crochet, knitting, giving birth, and gardening. And on the other side of my skills, hiking, fishing, camping, hunting, shooting, rock climbing, grilling and smoking, dirt biking, mechanics, survival, and butchering. If if the list of orange ones are longer than the list of purple ones, What does that mean? Because the list of orange ones are all masculine, according to the internet. We have to encourage one another to critically think. And we have to think about lists like that one that I just showed you and how abjectly absurd it is to rank our skills based on our genders. People are capable of so much, and that feels incredibly limiting. And why would you want to limit yourself? There's so much to explore, and you're worth exploring it. And it just shows that masculinity and femininity are incredibly subjective because I know a lot of men that do gardening. In fact, my grandfather's the one that taught me. I also know men that paint, bake, and every other thing on that list. And some of them are way better at it than me. Let's be really real here. When we use our critical thinking and we open the dialogue around all of this, we have a better chance of resolving it and feeling more comfortable talking about it and being honest about it, because that's what we have to do. We have to get to where we feel comfortable talking about it and being honest about it and giving people the space to heal from it. And in the process of healing from it, we also have to remember the youth. And because the manosphere tends to lean right and white, we definitely really have to be really honest about the things that parents have to do for kids and that men need to look out for doing for each other or their young nephews, especially if they maybe don't have a role model that can help model that or have these conversations with them. Maybe you being the cool uncle that can have these conversations makes it easier on the parents or parent in the case that I'm imagining of a single parent or a child that doesn't necessarily have a role model, a male role model. Um, these are these are the things from a therapist's perspective that we have to model and do in order to prevent boys from falling down this dangerous rabbit hole.
Parents of white boys don't want your kid radicalized online? Do these 5 things. 1. Interrupt the victim story. At some point, your son may say he feels attacked for just being white or male. Don't roll your eyes, but also don't coddle him either. Extremist groups that are just a podcast away groom boys by selling them the lie that they're the real victims of feminism or diversity. That victim story is one of the earliest hooks, turning isolation into blame that's easy to weaponize. The best prevention is early conversation, teaching the difference between discomfort and oppression, and offering healthier narratives about belonging and fairness. 2. Teach emotional literacy. If your son can't name or regulate his feelings, he's way more likely to turn rejection into rage. Teach him how to say, I feel lonely, instead of girls are the problem. Feelings don't disappear just because you ignore them. They leak out as blame and turn into resentment and contempt, and then far worse. 3. Model healthy masculinity. If all he hears is man up and don't cry, he's going to find belonging in toxic online spaces that reward cruelty, because if you won't let him be vulnerable, he'll settle for being violent. Show him that strength includes kindness, sensitivity, and respect, or Reddit will have.
And that's a prime example of another prime example of how men are oppressed, because they're oppressed, which creates or forces us to repress our emotions, right? Because the patriarchy doesn't allow us to have the full gambit of emotions, right? So we can only react in like one or two or three ways that are socially acceptable by men. That's what happens. And then we end up being angry and we end up being violent. There you go. That's another way men are oppressed. But we are oppressed again by men because women want us to express ourselves in more healthy ways. They want us to not be violent. They want us to not be angry all the time. Women are the ones pushing for that. Women are actually advocating for men. They do. They advocate for men all the time. Look, this is how I know women are the biggest male advocates, because women are the ones harmed by men the most. And they want to see men healthy, if not for any other reason than to stop the harm that they are suffering at the hands of men. See what I'm saying? Like, so it makes perfect sense that women are the biggest advocates. The same way I think black people are the biggest advocates of white people. Well, black people are we're the biggest advocates for white people. We want to see white people live their best fucking lives, just not at the expense of everybody else. That's how women are with men.
Happily show him the opposite. 4. Teach digital literacy. Stop pretending he's just gaming. He's also in Discord servers, YouTube rabbit holes, and TikTok feeds being told who to hate. Teach him what algorithms are and how propaganda works, or the internet will raise him for you. 5. Build belonging that isn't online, please. Isolation is rocket fuel for radicalization. If your kid doesn't feel connected in the real world, he's going to go looking for belonging on Discord, YouTube, and anonymous forums full of rage. And those places will happily hand him an identity built on cruelty. So here's the bottom line. Get your sons off Discord. Don't give them weapons, give them belonging, sign them up for bands, D&D groups, improv classes, woodworking, archery, volunteering, whatever makes him feel connected and creative. Talk to him about the feelings he's feeling before some manosphere influencer does it for you. Because if you don't shape his world, the algorithm will, and you're not gonna like the result.
That's exactly what we need to be doing. That's exactly what we need to be doing.
And that's exactly what we have to do. And we have to rebuild those spaces that the patriarchy and capitalism and the oligarchs have stolen from us. Those spaces where children can go and gather and be kids. We have to take the monetary blocks away from D&D groups and rebuild our skating rinks and different things that we do or used to have for children to do. When I was growing up, there were things for me to do. Now children don't have anything to do other than the internet. And if all they have to do is the internet, boys are going to find the manosphere. It's catered to them. It's made to groom them. The detrimental effects of the manosphere on men come in so many forms, as we've discussed above, and they just continue to proceed to isolate men from themselves and others. Because that's the reality. If you can't connect with your emotions and you can't feel the full breadth of human emotion, you're disconnected from yourself as much as you're disconnected from those around you. And that is probably a good portion of why we have such a high self-unaliving rate among men. And that is one of the biggest, most detrimental reasons why we have to work on fixing this problem. Men deserve to heal and have a full life, and the rest of us deserve not to be abused and hit with the bat that is your pain. We need to seek healthier communities and perspectives. There are more of them out there. There's the Men Engage, which I introduced y'all to a few weeks ago. We have this space. There's the Public Offender, Controversial Shannon. There are spaces. And I'm hoping that y'all build more, because that is a power you have while reimagining what this can and should look like. You have the power to build better spaces. We can and should heal this, and you deserve to, and we deserve for you to. And ultimately, it's going to take a lot of hard work, like we've been discussing for weeks now. And you're worth the work that it will take. And also, I am done for the week with this topic. I want to take calls from you all, and I am thinking that that looks like Mondays. I was anticipating doing that sooner than I think I'm going to. I am looking at the middle of October for that. We do have the voicemail, so you can always call into the voicemail, and I will happily respond to that. And then also the comments. you can leave a comment and I'll respond to that as well. And also, if you don't mind helping me, continue to do this really cool habit called eating, it'd be great. I have the Ko-fi or the store, and I mean, if you do the store, you get a cool piece of art or merchandise, and that could be fun. That could be totally fun. You might like it. You never know. So check those things out. I would greatly appreciate it. And I really appreciate y'all making it to the end of the video. And you know what I'm about to do. I'm about to celebrate you in the most absurd, silliest way imaginable. You ain't at the end of the video! Y'all rock. Y'all are so awesome. And I appreciate you so much. Take really good care of yourselves. And remember, you say two good things about you every time you say one bad. Yeah, that just keeps going. I'm not gonna forget. I'm not. That's just the thing you do now. All right. Take care of yourselves. See you next week.